Oh, fabulous. Well done. Over to you guys.
Okay, good evening. So I'm gonna share my screen now so that I can bring up the slide and we can talk through some bit and pieces of it. And the next one is gonna be hopefully enjoyable.
Yeah.
Uh, Let me know once you can see my screen. Mm, Oh, good.
We can see your screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So the topic for today is managing and navigating difficult career transitions. So I think at every point in time, everybody's gonna go through this phase. Probably maybe when you want to have some bit of career advancement or even at a point in time. Because I think looking at the statistics, I would say that this is going to be probably less than 2% of people that stay in the company for almost 20, 30 years or 20 years, probably the realist. A lot of people kind of jump ship at every point in time and have to switch jobs, switch roles, and probably because of different reasons. So we're going to be touching some bit of points on those reasons and how that could have some bit of impacts on you, and you should better position yourself so that it's going to be to your advantage. Because definitely that two sides to it. You transition, it could be probably positive or even negative. It could be a successful one, and it could be a one that has a very, let me say, bitter hand in hand. You kind of regret why did you have to make the move, or probably why do you have to do this at this point in time. So it could be probably you haven't really done your own assignment thoroughly. You haven't done your own due diligence, or you don't really understand the reason why you wanted to make a move, and it was just from probably making some sort of blind decisions and mistakes. And so we're going to be going through all those along the line and talking through it. So there are a lot of reasons why, as a person, you want to consider trying to make a move or make a switch. It could be probably because you've got a low workload in your plate and you getting so much task, and it's kind of affecting your mental and physical well-being, and you just decided that it's over. I think a lot of people kind of have that reason as a reason why they have to change or switch a job. Then it could be probably when you started your career, you started just because you wanted to make ends meet, and along the line, you've had a lot of probably a lot of money, and you wanted to do something purposeful, something probably you dream of doing. You want to follow your passion, you want to follow your goals, and that could be another reason. And it could be probably you're not really kind of motivated in your current role, and you wanted somebody where you can add a bit of a value to the organization and they can feel your impact. So you can have some bit of job satisfaction too for the reason why you're working for the company. It could also be probably you wanted to take some additional work, because I think I've been speaking to a lot of mentors lately, and majority of them says that at times they just feel that they can no longer had to the company can no longer had to them. Probably they've reached the highest peak. They're not the go-to person. They're the best in the field, and they just felt there's no really reason for them to continue, or probably it's not kind of challenging to them again, and they wanted to go into a fast-paced environment to learn more and kind of build on their expertise. And also, it could be probably you want to go get out of a negative environment or even a toxic environment. So it's cut across a lot of reasons why you will move from your present job and you want to make the switch. So there are a lot of steps and stages that you have to take, because if you recall, I mentioned that it could be a successful one, or it could even be a kind of one that have a negative impact on your career. So which is why you have to do this in a very calculated manner in order to evaluate if at the moment your current situation, you have to have some bit of a self reflection to see that do you really want to make this move, or kind of envisaged long-term goals to say, is this really what you want to be doing, or is this what you should be doing? Then also look through some bit of gap analysis to look at the transferable skills which you've got, which you've acquired over the years, and see if is this something that you want to change doing, or is it something I want to learn new skills, or is it something that is going to be marketable? Because definitely, if you're changing a job, it's not something kind of so easy. Because I think from my personal experience, I've changed job 3, 4 times, and I can tell you, it's not something kind of easy because you have to deal with a lot of stuff. You deal with new working environment, you deal with new working people relationship, you deal with new tools, new methodologies, a whole lot of things, even the culture and everything. And at times, it could take a toll on you. So, which is why you have to first evaluate if is the best choice you're gonna be taking to switch or to remain in your present situation. So the next is for you to now understand the areas of development, because I think I've had a lot of reasons. I've had some bit of reasons where people want to change. Probably they've received a very bad feedback from their upliner, and they needed to do some bit of development, and they just got they vexed up and say, no, I think this company is not appreciating me, or I had to make a move. But then the problem is, if you make a move based on that, then you haven't really solved the problem, which which is the current problem, which warranted the review point or the review point being raised. Because I think there is 100% chances that if you should make a move, then you're still gonna make the same mistake, and probably still had to make another move again, because you have to work on yourself, definitely. So you identify your growth and development and see how you can upskill yourself, how you can be a better person, and how you can address those points. And yeah, at the point of doing that, I think in many of the big four, they set up a performance improvement plan in which you have to walk through some bit of processes to develop yourself. At the end of the plan, you could have some bit of actual realization to see do I want to take a step back to stay with the company, or do I still want to make a move? And at any point, then that's going to be some bit of a decision for you to take. Then the third one, the steps you have to take again is you have to demand a purpose, because I think a lot of people we have lateral transition in which they transition from one company down to another company doing the same role. Then also it could be that you want to change entirely. And now I think it's kind of something that's quite easy right now, because it's more of you having some bit of experiences and having some bit of sellable point to excel in other role. Because I think, for example, now in the big four, you know, primarily looking for chartered accountant before they can take you up. They can take you from any field. So it's based on your skills and what you can do. So which is why you have to develop a purpose to see the reason why you want to make a move. And it could be probably lately there have been a lot of clamoring on AI, data analytics and business analytics. So it could be probably you want to take change in order to better suit yourself in terms of any possible disruption of AI to the business world. So you have to define a purpose and understand the reason why you want to make a switch, and also align it to your own purpose areas. Then I think the next bit now is coming through to the research point. So at every point in time, you have to have a backup plan and a plan, because you can't just say you want to make a move to now and you start making a move. You know, you have to make some bit of research into where you're going to and what you want to do, the companies you want to work for, because you can't just work for any company, definitely. So all those has to come into play in order for you to be able to make a successful move. Then the fifth one is you now developing the skills and experiences, because I think that's referred back to the point number two, where you've got some area of development for you to work on. So now you trying to develop new skills, new experiences, probably do some data analytics stock courses, or even try putting yourself into deep learning analytics and on how anything you need to excel in your field. Then you have to start developing your experience and competencies around that. Then I'm gonna uh, pause right now and allow my colleague John to further on the points thereon. I think you're with John.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Um, yeah. So I guess just one thing I wanted to quickly chip in before I go over some of the other points is that. So I think I'm guessing that the reason that some of us are on this call is because maybe you probably are thinking about going through a career transition. You are already in a career transition, so it would be maybe if you do have specific questions, maybe at this point it's good for you to start, having those questions down somewhere because we're going to quickly run through this, and the bulk of this session is going to be more about dealing with specifics that you are thinking about or you have specific questions in your mind that you want to have answered rather than just listen going through the some of the points that we're going to talk about. But yeah, I was going to go straight into talking about finding a roadmap, right? So at the end of the day, if you think about the third point, if you defining a purpose, right? When you're making a career transition, depending on whatever transition you're making, are you moving companies? Are you moving roles? Are you moving a completely different location? If you define a purpose, you probably it's working towards a particular goal, right? Maybe 10, 20, 15 years, this is where I want to be. And this is how I want to get to where I want to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And all of these career transitions you are making would most likely fit into that plan for how you want to get to where you're going to. Now, again, that's not perfect, right? Sometimes you make career transitions not because you have a plan for anything. It just probably because that's what is convenient in that moment. I know that I have, in fact, my very first job change was out of convenience. I was fed up with what was happening where I was before, and it just didn't matter where I went from that moment on. But yeah, so but some that's if that happens to you, is totally fine. But then of course, if that's not the case for you, you most likely have a plan, you know where you're going, and so all of the career transitions you are making, you want it to fit into that ultimate plan. And sometimes for you to be able to do that, you want to be able to find someone who has replicated, who has done what you are trying to do. You might want to call the person a mentor, whatever it is that you want to call the person. It could be a mentor, you could want to call the person a career coach, anything that you feel like labeling the person. But then the reason that that's helpful is that when you're making a career transition, there are things that you feel like there are things that you probably take for granted that you don't know that by the time you have made this career transition, you don't know that these are some of the pitfalls that you get into. But someone who has done it before you, or someone who's quite aware of the industry you're going to, if it's the changing industry that you're going to, or if it's a company that you're moving to, someone who is quite aware of that will be able to tell you some things that you very likely do not have not known about before speaking to them. And sometimes these little tips here and there are actually quite helpful in helping you decide whether or not this is good for you in that moment, or you want to, do some change course. You probably decide against making that career transition, or it could be that the person tells you, look, do this, do this, do this. You might want to delay your career transition. I'll give you an example. You might want to join a company. I know someone who was trying to join a company at a time when things were not looking very sharp for the company. And if he had joined the company at the time, chances were very high that he was going to be laid off not long after he joined the company. But he did speak to someone within the company, and the person was like, look, it's fine. You might want to join now, but I don't think that this company is in a good position, will be in a good position in a couple of months down the line. There are certain things, and funny enough, the company is quite a popular fintech company here in the UK. They had some going concern issues at some point, and a number of roles were sort of scaled back and all that. And so yeah, so things like that, these are little things that you probably would not know about. So you want to have a roadmap for, look, how exactly, what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? Yeah. Now, this career transition that I'm making, is it the right one for me to be able to get me to where I'm going? Sometimes you're better off staying where you are than making that transition sometimes. But yeah, I'm not going to label that point anymore. I'm just going. So the other thing is, you want, obviously, if you're going to make a move to a different organization, if you're making a career transition, I mean, if you're changing organizations, sometimes a career transition is not just changing organizations, right? It could be moving roles. You can be moving within the same organization. You can be moving to a different unit. You can be moving from a junior role to a senior role. So you were probably a junior for a couple of years. Now you're moving into a management role and things like that. It could be that. So not all career transitions, the point I'm trying to make is not all career transitions would require updating CVs and cover letters. Cover letters are becoming obsolete, by the way. But some companies, some organizations still want you to write a cover letter. But yeah, so not all would require you to update. But for the ones that would require you to update your CV, I think you want to be very, very deliberate about your CVs. The reason I say that is, so sometimes recruiters reach out to me and they're like, "Hi, I have this role and this blah blah blah. Do you want to discuss further? Would you send me your CV?" I'm like, I can't send you my CV if I don't know the role that you're recruiting for. I'm not just going to go and pull up the CV, the last CV that I used for the previous role, or just pull up one generic CV that I don't have a generic CV that I saved somewhere in my desktop that when someone says, "Give me your CV," I'm just going to pull that CV and give to the person. The only people that should have generic CVs are people that are looking for entry-level roles. Once you are beyond an entry-level role, you shouldn't necessarily have just one generic CV. Look, you might have one that you feel like, okay, this is my go-to CV that just sort of um, gives a background to your current role. This is what you're doing. This is my experience. This is my skill. It's not necessarily one that you would want to use to apply to a job. It might just be a generic CV that says, look, if anybody just wants to know anything about my professional background, my experience, my educational attainments and things like that, this CV I can give to them. But you want to be very, if you do share that kind of CV with anyone, you want to be very, very, one, you want to be very careful, and two, you want to let the person know upfront, look, this is not a CV. This, if I'm giving, if you're the reason I'm giving you this CV is you probably just want to know about my general experience, my background, and things like that. I'm not giving you this CV as an application to any specific role. So if you want a CV for as an application to a specific role, you need to know what the role is, and you want your CV to be very, very tailored to the role. Now, I think one thing to mention when it comes to making CVs for, particularly when you're doing it career transition, very likely, especially when it is moving roles, very likely the role that you're moving into would be one that your skills are probably not 100% match for. So it might not be a one-to-one. So for example, you have been maybe, okay, I'll give you very simple example. Someone who's been in external audit practice for maybe a couple of years, and now you are moving specifically to a different role, maybe within an organization. You're probably moving to reporting, you're probably moving to planning and analysis and things like that. Now you have transferable skills. If you go back to the first point, you have transferable skills, but you don't have that experience that is 100% matching that role. So the question then becomes, how do you put your CV together to make, so you need to be able to think about what are the transferable skills when you're making your CV. What are the skills that you have currently in your role that you're currently in? You want to think about some of the education. If you look at the second point, or is it the third or fourth point where it says develop skills and experience? I mean, developing skill can be as simple as taking a LinkedIn course, it can be as simple as taking a course on Coursera, it can be as simple as having a conversation with someone who has experience in something that you want to do. It can be as simple as that. It just depends on how you put that on your CV. So you want to be able to think about what are the transferable skills that you have in your current role, in your previous roles, that will be very, very relevant to the new role that you're going to take. What are some of the courses you might have taken, some of the just general knowledge. It could have been knowledge just from reading stuff off the internet. People don't think that reading stuff off the internet counts as upskilling, but that's not true. Just reading stuff off the internet does count as upskilling. The problem is, how do you sell that? How do I communicate that across to someone? I can't just go to someone and say, oh, look, I know about this. Well, prove it to me. Well, I read it off the internet. Doesn't make sense, right? So it depends on, so you have to be able to think about, how do I write a CV that captures all of these things? So, and these are the things that you want to be forefront in your CV. You want to make sure that these things you put them in places where, so if you think about how people read CVs, a lot of recruiters, people who are recruiting for a job, they get many, 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 many CVs. So then they're not going to spend a lot of time looking at your CV. So you want to be able to find the most strategic points in your CVs where you can put all of these skills, the skills that are transferable, that you have gained in your current role, that are very, very, very relevant to your new role. Some of the certifications that you have gained. You don't want to start putting your BSc that you obtained like 15 years ago at the top of your CV, because you made it first class. 15 years down the line, nobody cares whether you made it first class or not, right? So yeah, so I guess then obviously the next one would be overcoming imposter syndrome. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that, it almost sounds like a cliche now when you talk about imposter syndrome. Almost every day you go on LinkedIn, somebody's writing about imposter syndrome. So for me, it's like, I don't know if I've ever felt imposter syndrome. I don't know. There are times I've felt not as confident, but I don't know if I can define that as having felt having imposter syndrome. But it does happen to a lot of people where you feel like, look, you're probably not good enough for the role. And this is particularly important when you're actually making a transition, when you're moving to a new role. This is particularly common, rather, because when you're moving to a new role, some of the questions that you probably will be asking yourself is, am I good enough to take that role? Am I even going to be able to come across as competent enough? And then it gets worse when sometimes you go to interviews where everyone, they schedule everyone almost at the same time. And then you're in the room with everyone you are interviewing, people that are going to be in the interview with you, and you're talking to everyone, and it does seem like almost everyone there almost seems like they're better than you, or more experienced than you, or probably have more of a background in what the role entails than you. And you begin to feel like, oh, now. So things like that happens. But I guess for me, the way I think about the imposter syndrome will be, look, for every role that I'm trying to get, I usually have it at the back of my mind that I may not get this role. And it's not going to be the end of the world if I do not get this role. So I'm speaking about imposter syndrome, not generally now in terms of your work environment and things. I'm speaking about it in context specific to transitioning, moving to a new role, how that might impact. So take that with whatever I'm saying with a grain of salt. So it's not general imposter syndrome. So usually I want to have at the back of my mind, look, whatever role I'm interviewing for, I may not get this role, and it's not going to be the end of the world if I don't get this role. And usually you're able to think that way, particularly if you have a job already where it's not like you're on the verge of getting fired from your job or stuff like that, right? So it's more difficult when you are in a very, very difficult position in your current role, right? But first things first, that's how I think. It's not going to be the end of the world if I don't get this role. Then the other thing would be, look, you want to put your best foot forward. At the end of the day, when you go into an interview, it's more about how you are able to communicate it's how well you are able to communicate and articulate what you have on your CV, and how you understand the role that you're coming into. More sometimes it's more about that than even having that experience. So you find out. I remember very, 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 very long ago, at some point, I wanted to get a role in management consulting. And I was very, very, very confident. In my mind, I thought, look, what is it about management consulting? I'd done a few like informal internships and things like that. I had read a whole lot about management. I was like, look, what is it about management consulting? So but then I had I'd never ever learned how to interview for a management consulting role. I just thought I would just go in and wing it because I felt like, look, some of the things that already I'm familiar with, some of the concepts and things like that. But the interview was completely different. It had nothing to do with some of the technical things that I'd learned and all of that. It was more about how do you articulate yourself. So, I'm sure a number of you know what assessment centers are and how those things work. I'd never prepared for an assessment center. And before then, I had had conversations with some of the people outside, coming in and all that. In your mind, you size up everyone who is out there. I knew that, look, if I'm very sure I've pointed out a few people. I'm very sure I'll get a job before this one, this one, this one, and that person. These ones will not get a job before me. But turned out that a few years down the line, I actually met one of the people that were interviewing. I didn't get the job, long and short, and I actually met someone that we're interviewing. Interviewed for, and he actually did get the job. In a way, when I was going back, I was like, nah, man, how is it that this particular guy got that job? And then of course we exchanged numbers and stuff like that, and we just got talking, and I began to realize certain things about how you communicate your experience in an interview, how you articulate yourself in terms of, you may not have 100% experience in that regard, in that area, but the way that you express what you know, the way that you express some of the things you have learned, actually, because interviews are very subjective. I may not necessarily hire someone because I think they are technically competent. There are other things I'm looking for. Okay, yeah, this guy is technically competent in this area, but then I don't just need someone who is very technically competent. I need someone who's technically competent in a role, but also because this role is one that interfaces with senior management, I need someone who is able to take concepts that are complex and break it down and explain it to someone in senior management in a way that is as simple as possible. Now, in that regard, I may hire someone who is not as technically competent as the other guy, but is more, is more articulate, or is more able to take concepts, break it down, and be able to give it back to me in a way that will be understandable by almost anyone. So these are some of the things that you want to think about. So so long and short is, if you're thinking about imposter syndrome, in this regard, I will say, think more about your strengths, think more about how you're able to communicate your strengths. If you know specific weaknesses that you think might not be might disadvantage you, you might want to try and work on those weaknesses beforehand. So yeah, the whole idea is you want to put yourself in a strong position to be able to clinch the role. And if you don't clinch the role, it's not the end of the world. There are 100 many roles that will come after that. I mean, it's always a lesson every interview you go to. For every interview you go to, the next interview you actually always do better than in the previous one. So yeah, then yeah, navigating job search and interview process. I think I've already kind of touched on that in what I've been talking about. I guess the one thing I want to just highlight in job search is, and this is something that works for me, you sometimes there are roles that are like you just go generically and you just go search generic job sites, maybe Indeed, Jobberman, or job sites, and you start trying to filter. Maybe you're looking for a role as a project manager. You start trying to filter, okay, project manager roles. You probably see hundreds of project manager roles. Then you're applying to all of them. What I try to do is, I don't know, not many companies in Nigeria at the moment are very heavy users of LinkedIn, but I think that's changing. But outside Nigeria, many companies actually use LinkedIn a lot in terms of, and a lot of recruiters are using LinkedIn. So what I try to do is I try to make a list of the kinds of organizations, specific organizations that I want to go to. So for example, here in the UK, if you're coming from outside the UK, you need to find an organization that sponsors you, that can pay for sponsorship and things like that. So you want to set out criteria for well, these are all the criteria that I want the organization to meet, and you want to set specific organizations that meet those criteria, and then you want to go. So what I do is I go to their jobs, whatever, and look for the specific roles I'm looking for. I look for all of the the job description and blah blah blah, and then I make sure I try to see whether whoever the recruiter is, most companies are going to have the person who is recruiting for that role just at the bottom of where the job description, after the whole job description, sometimes at the top. You would most likely see who the person is that is recruiting for the role. So what I try to do is, which I have done this I think one time, and this actually worked, connect with the person, but I try to see if we have any mutual connections. If I have mutual connections with this person, I try to find out. I mean, sometimes this is a guess game, but I try to find out if there's any mutual connection of mine that I know personally that feels like they would know this person personally. So not just like a LinkedIn connection. And I try to, like, if I can, if I find that, I try to leverage. And this time I did this one time and it worked. Now, again, it doesn't always work in that way, but you want to do as much as you can to be able to increase your chances to the best level that it can be at. So that's one of the things I do. The other thing you probably want to do as well is, sometimes maybe you might not use LinkedIn to get the job descriptions and things like that. Maybe you might have applied to the job from a generic site, but you want to like find people within the organization on LinkedIn. You want to connect with them and sometimes reach out to them. People in so if you're applying for a project manager role, say in an organization, let me say EY, for example, EY is hiring for project manager role, you applied, maybe not through LinkedIn or anything. Probably won't just go on LinkedIn, connect with a few people from EY that are probably project managers at EY. Maybe you want to connect to a senior project, someone who's a senior manager in project management, someone who's a director or stuff like that. And you want to be able to reach out to them and just, hey, I'm trying to break into the field, I'm trying to do this and trying to do that. You don't necessarily have to tell them, look, I've just applied to a project manager role from EY, and I need you to tell me everything about project management in EY, and I need you to tell me how EY does stuff. And you want to be able to have informal conversation. And I actually, from personal point of view, I find that people are quite willing to engage when you do reach out to them. I mean, not everyone would engage. Many people would not respond, but I think a good number of people do. So yeah, those are some of the things I try to do when I'm trying to find a new role. So yeah, and then obviously post transition, when you do transition to a new role, there are a lot of things that happen. Sometimes there's a steep learning curve. Sometimes you're trying to settle into the role. You might find that, look, it's not everything that you thought it would be. So, but one of the things I would say is, one of the first things you want to do when you transition into a new role is you want to identify what drives performance. Now, everyone knows about KPIs. So maybe you might even be in your job, whatever document they give you on when you join the role, or these are your KPIs. But I can tell you that a lot of those formal KPIs, yeah, they are the KPIs that you are going to be probably appraised on formally and all of that. But there are a lot of hidden KPIs that you have no idea about, as simple as relationship building. Funny enough, relationship building is a big KPI in many organizations, but you definitely wouldn't find it as a formal KPI on your whatever job document they give you when you join the firm. Particularly people who are in organizations like, for example, like people who are in the Big Fours, you'd realize that your performance a lot of times depends on how well your relationship is with the superiors that you worked with. There are a lot of people that get consistently rated as higher performers, outstanding performers, and then you sit at the back and you're like, "Yeah, this guy isn't doing anything different to what I'm doing. I probably am even doing a little more than this person." But you then observe that this guy probably has been working with the same person for the last 1, 2, 3 years. This person is like, so there's a there's a sort of relationship there where this person feels almost feels obliged to rate them as higher performing every time, as long as they're just doing what the normal thing that they are meant to do. So you want to be able to speak to people around the organization and like, look, hey, what are year-end appraisals like here? Like, what are some of the conversations that happen around the time that year-end appraisals are happening? Who what are some of the things? What are some of the, have do you participate in year-end appraisals? Yeah, okay. What are some of the things that come up in these conversations? What are some of those subjective things that they say about, that they say about people that nobody would necessarily tell you as if during a formal process? You want to find out all of these things and you want to start, trying to implement them in your everyday, from your day-to-day working. If it means that you should be, and obviously learning things like that means you have to build relationships across the organization. You have to be willing to talk to people, because that's the only way you learn these things, right? I guess I've already touched on the second one a little bit, identifying and building key relationships required to advance in the role. So what I'll say differently for this is, in every organization that you go to, there are usually people whose opinions weigh more than everyone else. Sometimes these people are not the ultimate bosses. I'll give you an example. In my very first role when I was at Deloitte in Nigeria, there were two people in the unit where I was, two people. They were not partners. They were senior managers. But if they said something during the appraisals about you, that could be the reason you were promoted or not promoted. They were senior managers. They were not partners. They were not directors. Every single partner respected them. Maybe one, they were older than all of the partners. They have been there before the partners. Just for some reason, they were not made partners. But so these are things that you want to find out. Look, in these organizations, who are the people that look, when it comes to advancing your career. Now I'm using appraisals as, obviously appraisals are like the most objective, measure of performance and things like that. But there are many organizations where it's not just appraisals, right? It's about, so whether or not you advance in an organization, sometimes it's not only about appraisals. You can have very good appraisals at the end of the year. Consistently your appraisals are good, and maybe new roles are opening up ahead of you and someone else is taking, is put in those roles ahead of you, which you felt like, hey, I've had fantastic appraisals all through my stay here. How is it that I'm not getting this role? So it's not always about appraisals, but I'm just using appraisals as, like the most low resolution form of example. But it's not just about appraisals, but you want to find out there are people within almost every organization where just being able to build relationships with them, let them know who you are. Sometimes it could be as simple as letting them know who you are. You don't necessarily have to have constant interactions with them. It's just one-time interaction. You could be one-time interactions that you have with them. Maybe you just have a catch up with them once every month and say, look, I just want to, I just want to discuss with you about my career. I've been here 1 year, I've been here 5 years, I've been here how many years, or how have you, or I've just moved into this role. I just want to talk to you about how do you think I I want to advance in this role. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to get some advice from you and blah blah. Is it fine for me to put like a catch up in your diary once every 2 months or 3 months? I want to update you on my progress. I want to get experience. I want to get your feedback. I want to. It doesn't necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have worked with them directly, so you could basically just take them. It's. I don't want to call it a mentor per se, but you could call it a mentor if you want to. But yeah, it could just be that once every 2 months, just catch up with them. I want to pick your brain on one or two things. Yeah. So you want to identify those kinds of people, and you want to make sure that look, those things that you're you know you're visible to those people, and yeah, closing the learning curve. I think when you get into a new role, you want to devote extra time to learning all that it takes for you to do well in the role. And the other thing that you want to do about on the learning curve side of things is you want to connect with people who have been in the role for a while, who are able to like there are particularly people on that are closer to your level than whoever the bosses are, because those are the kind of people that would there are little things that you may not know about. Look, this is a quick shortcut to do this. This is a quick shortcut to do that. Those are little things that you want to be able to learn, and you want to be able to like connect with people that are closer to your level, and say someone that you can always run to when you have something that you need someone to quickly put you through, and you don't feel comfortable to speak to whoever you're reporting to, or you don't want to look foolish in front of that person. You want to have someone on the side that you can always chat or reach out to and say, look, hey, I don't want to look stupid in front of the bosses, and can you quickly show me how to do stuff like that? So yeah, I think yeah, that's about where I would stop. I guess time is fast spent. I don't know, Sam, do we want to talk about personal experiences, or we just jump straight into Q&A?
I think Q&A is fine.
Yeah, exactly, because
I've even got a question for you, just because I was hoping that we would have more people, especially those people that come into my DMs, especially people in the UK who probably, while back in Nigeria, they were probably, so for instance, someone who was like a banker, probably worked in like maybe banking operations, and then came to the UK, did masters in say data management, or did something project management, finance related stuff, anything along those lines, something totally different from like their years of experience back home, like 5 years, some 7 years, and they're here, they've done project management, they've fallen in love with the theory they've learned in school, and they really want to make a transition into that because they feel they will be able to perform absolutely well when they get into the field, basically. And then most of the questions I get is, how do I make this transition? How do I even get the job that I need? And even when I get a job, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm performing well on the job? So those are the kind of questions that I get. And I understand that everything you've said basically covers most of it, but I still want you to talk to people with these kind of situations. What would your advice be to them in terms of practical steps they need to take to be able to land that first job that will move them from what they were doing before to where they now want to be?
Okay, I can jump on that very well, because I kind of an experience in that already, because I have my brother. He came into the UK, and before then he used to be a lecturer in Nigeria, and he came in through, I think, masters, and along the night I had a discuss with him to say that I think going forward you might need to pick some bit of competency in data analytics and project management. So what he did was he went ahead and looked for a course. So he started from having a course, and he did a course for 3 months. And I think the way they do this thing is just that the course provider work alongside the guy, and immediately finished 3 months, and he was kind of confident to lead on engagement. What they did was they give him a kind of a life job again. So he was now managing. So the provider got a job for him, not really a life job, just for him to have some bit of experiences and leading a kind of a life role. So he had to manage a project for 3 months. So he put that on CV, and when he was doing that alongside, he started applying, and it wasn't like kind of a vague experience to say that okay, you're trying to move in the project management space and you haven't had any experience thereof or something whatsoever. So then from there, he was able to leverage on those experiences now catapult him to finding something real for himself. So I think looking through that, I think the first step in trying to move out of your comfort zone is trying to do it very gradual and systematically. Because definitely you need to do it. You can't just say that, okay, you want to move from being an accountant and be a kind of medical doctor right now. It's kind of difficult when it's gonna be some bit of a license role, but if it's something that's just have to do with skill acquisition, I think it's very good for him to go in there step by step and having to have some bit of experience along the line. Another thing I've done in the past is I recall when I wanted to start going into accounting, I was working at Dana Airline at some point, and what I did was after closing that work at Dana Airline, I went to kind of a boutique firm. Uh, Probably because I had some bit of personal relationship with the owner, and I used to work probably from 5 to 7. Then I was learning the ropes gradually. I think when I did 6 months, then I changed and I switched to the rope work full time. Then I didn't even use 3 months, and I got a very better one. So it has to do something systematically and gradually. You can't just do it drastically. I wouldn't know, probably Johnny have some additional things to put in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I would just add to that is actually more of about it just embodies the second thing, the second experience example you gave, which is about you personally. Um, it might be difficult because, so for example, you might in there are certain degrees that you learn, and there's not necessarily a professional. I mean, it's easy to find a data analytics course and stuff like that, but sometimes it's just a university degree. You went to do psychology. Where do you want to practice psychology before getting into psychology? But that's where, and this sounds like a cliche, but it is actually the way relationship building. Look, a lot of roles would come to you. So if there's a role that I'm recruiting for example, and I have a lot of CVs that I'm reviewing, and I look at your CV and you just have a degree in that field. You probably have been doing something for many years. You don't have any experience, but you have just finished a master's in that field, maybe psychology or what have you. And I'm seeing other CVs where someone who has worked in that field, they probably don't have a master's, maybe have a bachelor's degree. I'm tilted more towards the other guy, right? And that's because it's very impersonal. I don't know either of you. I don't know either of you. I'm just looking at two CVs and I'm picking the better CV. But if I had if I've had any interactions with you before, I know your motivations. I know that look, this person is just looking for an opportunity to break into this field. I've spoken to you about, you've told me about your master's degree. You've told me about some of the things you've learned about. You've told me about some of the concepts that you have learned, how you understand some of these concepts. I'm able to put a face to a name. The interaction is more human. I know that, look, I've had a conversation with this person. This person would likely do well. All he needs is an opportunity. It's easier for me to not even review CVs and just give you a role. It could be a temporary one initially, like it could be an internship and things like that, before moving to a new role. So it's very, for me, I think, and this is something that I've just started having speaking to a couple of mentees, and it's actually worked for one person, just basically reaching out to people on LinkedIn, sharing their background with the person and saying, look, here's my background. And he did it with a couple of persons on LinkedIn. Somebody reached out. A few people responded, obviously, but somebody reached out. They had a conversation. They talked, and the person was like, okay, look, there's an internship that's open currently. Where I work, I'm just going to recommend you for it. Let that be your first leg into the industry. And that's how it happened for the person, right? So obviously you continue to apply to different roles, but try as much as possible to reach out to people in these fields. Just share your background, share your experience. Look, hi, blah blah blah. This is who I am. This is my experience. This is my background. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is why I think that, and this is why I've not been able to accomplish it, because look, my experience has been in this before, but I've just done a master's degree, and these are some of the concepts I've learned. I'm willing to, if you would like to have a 10-15 minutes conversation, let me to talk to you about some of the things I've learned, my experience, and blah blah, and things like that. It's you would, if you do that for 100 people, if you reach out to 100 people, 1,000 people, maybe you don't get response back from 98 or 90 or what have you. It doesn't matter. All you need is one person to respond back to you positively. And just like Sam shared, I had the same experience with my wife as well. My wife, when we first came to the UK, she was trying to get into the accounting industry. It was difficult, and so she got reached out to a firm, and she worked for free for 6 months, I think. Yeah, it was about 6 months. So that's the other thing. You have to be willing to make some sacrifices if that's what you truly want. So the fact that you have 5 years or 6 years or whatever experience, and somebody says, look, what I have available right now is an internship role and it's for 3 months, and you're like, please, I don't need a 3 months internship right now. I need a full-time role because, hey, I have bills to pay, or I mean, these are valid things, right? You have bills to pay sometimes, but if you can walk around doing a 6 month or 3 months internship in what you want to do and find some other job, probably go at night or something, or what have you, just to make ends meet, but you know that it you should go for it. It's something that, so don't turn down internships, don't turn down temporary roles. If you get a temporary role, you take it tentatively till you find a permanent one. And yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult sometimes breaking into some of these fields, but yeah, these are some practical tips that actually I have seen work for a number of people. So yeah, that's what I want to do.
Thank you so much. Just conscious of time and the people on the call, is there anyone who's got any question? Now, listen, for every single one of our mentoring sessions, your question may not be really directly related to what we've discussed. All of the mentors that come here can speak to just about anything, any question you have, as long as it's career related. Even if they don't have the answers, they will go look for the answers and come back to you, obviously. So if anyone has got any questions or anything that's really concerning for you now, and don't forget that one of the reasons why we do these group mentoring sessions is because it's just almost impracticable to talk to people one-on-one. So if you've got any particular questions or anything concerning anything you want to discuss, we've got 4 of us here that can talk to just about anything you want to discuss. So if you've got any of that, just use the raise hand function and we can take your question or type something out in the chat and then we can respond to you. Okay. So we're just going to wait for like a minute or so. If we've got any questions, that's fine. If not, we'll call it an evening so everybody can go prepare for work tomorrow. But in the meantime, John and Samuel, thank you so much. And I mean, just from my own perspective, and one of the things you said, which I really, really consider really important at the beginning, John, is that you need to be a risk taker sometimes for you to be able to do this transition, because it's not the easiest thing to do. I don't categorize myself as a risk taker personally. I'm not. I can do any other thing, but I'm not a risk taker. I'll probably batch myself in the risk averse kind of group. So if you really do need to, do this transition, change what you're doing or move into something else, or even change your job, basically, it has to take some level of courage for you to be able to do it. And I think that makes absolute sense. Okay, so if there is no one who's got a question, I think we can call it an evening so that we can let everybody go rest. But thank you so much, John, and thank you so much.
Hello, ma.
Hi, Toyo.
Hello.
Hi, Chelsea.
Good evening. Good evening, ma. Sorry, I was on transit. That's why I'm just going off and on.
No
Sorry,
worries.
sir. Mr. Toluloko, you talk about transferring skills. for instance, someone, an accountant that want to specialize into reporting and analysis, I want to ask, like, if you have a skills working as an accountant and now you want to migrate into financial reporting, what advice can you give someone like that, and what kind of skills will I need to build in that regards, please?
Okay, sure. I mean, I think this is one that any of us can actually respond to, because that's what all three of us are doing. Um, but yeah, I mean, so if you say as an accountant, I guess I'm trying to think about what you mean by accountant. Are you in the broadest? Are you using the broad, speaking about an accountant in the broadest form, like, or are you, uh, you know, using the term accountant in a very specific form, in the sense that, okay, you've only been doing things like that are more of recording transactions and in that regard, and you haven't really done the more complex stuff relating to reporting, planning, analysis, and things like that. But again, if that's what you mean, I'm going to assume that that's what you mean.
I've not done anything relating to reporting, but I'm a payable accountant. That's what I'm doing
Okay,
currently.
okay, cool. Um, so first things first is you have to get qualified. The reason I say that is, I mean, even if you're not fully qualified, you have to be taking the um exams seriously. The reason I say that is because when you go through, whether it's ICANN or ACCA or ICAW, whatever one you're taking, when you go through the syllabus, there is no way that you go through the entire syllabus that you will not come out on the other side having at least 60% of the knowledge that you need to go into reporting, planning, and analysis, knowledge wise. Now, so once you have that in the bag, knowledge, the next gap you want to bridge is experience. So you have the knowledge, you know what reporting is, you can, from just going through the reading the syllabus, going through the materials, the book, you know how to theoretically prepare a financial statement, you know how to theoretically prepare a financial model, or you know how to perform, put together a financial statement analysis theoretically. So the question then becomes, practically now, how how do you bridge that gap between knowledge and experience? And for me, I think it's more to do with, depending on where you are. So if you're in an organization where, and I'm sure that most organizations are like that, they kind of break up their financial reporting. So you have payables, you have reporting, you have planning, you have this. You want to be able to connect with people across, and it's what I still do till today. If there's anything, I'm kind of fortunate to work in an organization where there's like the number of units are massive, right? So if there's anything that I want to know about anything at all, what I try to do first is find somebody in that unit or whatever it is that I want to start learning about, start gaining some experience in, connect with that person and say, look, um, I'm very, very open to the person and say, so for recently I wanted to start learning stuff about treasury because I haven't really done stuff in core treasury. So I just go straight to the person. I'm like, hey, I went someone in treasury. I had built, some sort of relationship over time. And I'm like, look, I'm thinking that potentially in the future, I might want to transition into treasury, and I want to start learning, knowing about, what are some of the core skills in treasury and things like that. Now, what the person and I have done now is we meet twice a month. And so we just schedule like a 1 hour conversation twice a month, and we go through some, like, and this is, I'm learning it in, like, it's practical in the sense that he's not just standing there and telling me, oh, this is what treasury is about. This is how you make trades. This is blah, blah. We're going through the motions on his system. He's showing me stuff. Like, I can tell you, at least to a large extent, I can execute a trade now and things like that. So if you have the opportunity to do that, you might want to connect with people across the organization where you work to be able to. But if you don't have the opportunity to do that, there are quite a number of resources online. So I will tell you that one of the best tools that I have come across is Coursera. The reason why Coursera is one of the best tools that I've come across, and I actually prefer Coursera to not Coursera, what am I saying? Udemy, not Coursera, Udemy. The reason why Udemy is one of the best learning tools I've come across, which I actually prefer Udemy to Coursera and edX, is because the people who put stuff on Udemy are people who are putting learning, they curate a learning about something that they really, really know about. Something that's so practical. So you take a course on Udemy, it's as practical can be. It's not very formal. It may not have all of your well-designed syllabuses and all of that that you get from having to go to a university program or edX and stuff. But for me, it is better than going through a Coursera or an edX course that just gives you a well-structured syllabus and theoretical whatever. These guys who are putting courses on Udemy, they are putting their actual experience out there. They are trying to monetize it, fine, and it's not as expensive. So they are putting their actual experience out there. If you want to learn about financial statements analysis, for example, if you go on Udemy, I can guarantee you'd find like 150 people who have like solid financial statements analysis that they have put together based on their own experience, what they have been doing over the last couple of years. You can see the same thing for financial reporting. You can see the same thing for just about anything, right? So I think that's another thing you probably want to do, like go on Udemy. It might cost you a little bit. You probably want to make that investment to go on Udemy. I'll tell you something that I've done before is I've taken a course on Udemy, and it was so practical and it's part of what I used to get the current role. I mean, it was so practical that I put it on my CV, like I had been doing that for a while. And when I was talking about it in the interview, you had no idea that I had just gone to learn that off a course that somebody put on Udemy. So that's how, powerful Udemy is as a tool. And in my mind, I think it's probably the best open learning tool than any of the more formal ones. So yeah, I think for me, those are some of the tips that I would give you in that regard. And yeah, hopefully they make sense to you. So yeah, or Sam, if there's anything else you want to.
No, I think that makes sense. I got my answer. Okay, so Ruth has her hands up. So Ruth, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. My question is actually on transition. Sorry, I came late. My question is actually on transition. So, from past meetings we've had, I've been able to pick one or two, and from some of the videos or a dropped, I've been able to get through one or two information. So, but I'm having like a dilemma between two options. So, I was actually in Nigeria. Working in Nigeria, I already qualified as a chartered accountant with the ICANN before relocating to the UK to do my master's degree, but on a related field, not on what I was doing before or what I had studied in my BSc, but do a related course. So I'm kind of like having a dilemma between 2 points. So is it that one of the issues I'm having is I'm having issues with breaking into the organization. Like I have a list of organizations that I really want to work with, like in the UK, for the intended courses I want to do and then experience I want to have, which is an audit. But I'd previously been doing accounting transactions in Nigeria before with a little bit of experience, about 2 or 3 years experience. So it was like, oh, this is like the only thing I've done in audits was an internship I did during my undergraduate study. So that's basically the only thing I had, and then my knowledge on my ICANN courses. So the issues I'm having is that two issues. One, I'm having issues with breaking into the organization that I really want to do with my previous experience as the financial transactions, or breaking into the industry like in audits, because I really want to transition from transactions like normal journal entry transactions and to audit, like to specialize in audit alone. But audit has different kinds, different branches, if I would say. So there's a particular part of audit which is transactions. So I feel like I can relate more with that one because I've had a bit of experience in Nigeria, though it might be a little bit different from what I was doing before, but I feel I could relate more. So I'm having an issue that, do I actually focus on the organizations alone and going for other experienced roles that I've had experience in Nigeria, or I should focus on actually breaking into the audit industry? I don't know if you're trying to get my point.
So see, listen, I must have lost you at some point, but I think Moses is saying that he has a similar challenge. So Moses, can you do us a favor? Could you, no, the similar challenge you have, is it what Ruth has said or what Samuel has put up? Which one?
Ruth.
Both. Okay, could you help summarize what Ruth may be looking for answers to, so that we can pick it up and answer? Because I think I lost that a bit there, so I just need to make sure that I've got her very well.
Okay, I think the long and short of it is she has basically been doing accounting.
Yes.
And she wants to transition into audit space.
Okay. And then when you say this audit, because you said transaction, so I was lost a bit. So are you talking about external audit or internal audit or the advisory arm of a financial services firm?
Definitely the advisory.
Advisory. Okay.
So audit advisory. I don't get that. Advisory.
No. So it may be, so there is the financial reporting side. I think they call it all those people that help like the finance team set up like their financial systems and all of that and do all of that. So there is that point. See, if I may not answer you 100%, just because I'm still trying to.
Sorry,
we need to put
just one quick thing before I just want to chip in. So it does seem like Moses has made that transition, or is Moses having the same challenge as well? Because you said had a similar challenge. So I wanted to know if you had it and don't have it anymore, or you still have that challenge.
Moses has just made a move. So that move can be, and Moses is here. Why am I talking for Moses?
So exactly, I was going to say, why don't you share your experience a little bit, and then we can top up on your experience. I think that's one of the reasons for conversations like this. So you kind of share some of the, share your experience, and maybe Ruth can gain something from it. And then if there's anything to top up, I can top up as well, because I do have a few ideas I want to share with you, Ruth.
Okay. So I was previously working in PwC Nigeria as a strategy consulting unit, right? So I wanted to move to audits, and it was really a big challenge. I spoke to people in-house, right? And it didn't work out. I also reached out to people on LinkedIn, and everybody was like, you don't have enough experience in audit, would have taken you in and all that. So what I did was I reached out to, instead of reaching out to big four firms that were basically looking out for people with more experience. So I just went to smaller firms, right? So I reached out to firms like Mazars, Video, and all that. So because I had PwC on my CV, they could, they knew that, okay, this guy, if he's coming from this particular background, he's able to catch up with the transition and all that. So I got audience from those people. So while I just joined those mid-sized firms, I used that as a transition point to get back into big four firms. So you might, if you're not getting bigger firms, my own advice is you can approach smaller firms. So the fact that you even have experience in accounting operations. So like you said, you need to first define what you really want. Is it audit itself or financial accounting advisory? If it's financial accounting advisory, you can easily get into any big four firm, because they want people, because so many of them offered me accounting advisory, but I did not want that. I wanted audit itself. So if you want audit, you could consider going for a lesser firm in size, like mid-size firms. Then you work there maybe 6 months, a year, then you can transition to bigger firms. So that's my own point of view. No advice.
Yeah, so, and I mean, just because you're in the UK, Ruth, I may not know all of the surrounding situations, like if you've got some complexities around sponsorship and all of that. My immediate trigger will be, maybe you need to determine what you want in the long run, but also have, like, if I can't do this, I can do, okay, so these are the 3 things I think I may be able to do. And also, just like John mentioned, and it has always been the core of the things I've always said, identify the companies that can help you get that role and can also sponsor you. So you must put everything into perspective. So you're not just wasting your time and energy applying to just about anything if that's not what you want, or they will not be able to satisfy one of the key criteria. So I think for everyone trying to make a transition in the UK as international students, breaking into the industry is very important, and I think it's really the starting point. So of course, everything we've said before, and Ruth, I've asked this question before you joined on your behalf and the other people who reach out to me in similar circumstance, and we would share the recording so you can listen again and get all the points that John and Samuel have raised. Now, in my own view, breaking into the market is very key, because once you break into the market, it is so easy to then make any move you want to make after a couple of months. So I think if you concentrate on breaking into the market using all of the cold calls on LinkedIn, trying to leverage on the network you have, even leveraging someone like me to get someone to give you a referral, that kind of deal, leverage on your network and do all of that sort of stuff you need to do. Get a job first, right? So another thing I say is, other than trying to, some people will insist it has to be a job that sponsors. Now, the first one, you go for it, but you don't stop working. So a lot of people will be like, they're not sponsoring me, so I'm not doing. So that does not make sense, because you also need to build experience as well, which will then allow any company that wants to sponsor you also give you a chance. So you need to break in that regard. So the first thing I'm thinking about is, irrespective of what your experience has been and what you want to go in for, remain open and remain agile. Because whatever experience you want to dabble into, you will still get the opportunity to do it anyways. So in these first few months when you're still trying to settle in and everything, be open-minded and get the sort of experience you need to get for you to continue to progress, basically. I think that's what I'm just going to have.
Yeah, I was going to add something to that as well. And I mean, I think Moses, what Moses shared is actually perfect. You actually, if you cannot get in, it's actually quite difficult to break into the top firms here in the UK. It's actually quite difficult, right? So you want to make a list of probably the top 25 firms in the UK. Make sure you know all of the top 25 firms in the UK. And then you want to go down that list. And look, I'll tell you something. A lot of people get exhausted with making applications. And usually I think that's the problem. See, if you haven't sent at least sent out maybe 400 or 500 applications yet, there's no reason for you to be tired. You can't have sent out 10 applications and you don't get any, and if you don't get anything back, you feel like, oh, I've been sending applications, 10, 15, 20 applications. Get to 400 and then you can start complaining, right? So now, having said that, just make a list of the top firms. And I think Moses' advice is like solid. Obviously, you still apply to the top firms, but don't ignore the bottom firms, because usually you might, those are the firms that actually are most likely more likely to give you a chance. And then you join those firms, and then you might be able to then from there go up. And then, like Aura said, you might not. I'm sure that you get a 2-year post-study visa just after your so what I usually would advise, which is what I'm currently working with someone who's trying to do this as well, when you're applying to those roles, do not just have a tick that you do not need sponsorship. The reason I say you should do that is this. there are some auto criteria that are set up with
Yeah.
once you click that you need sponsorship, they just X you from the process. Now, the question someone would ask me, oh, isn't that a lie? No, it's not, because you don't need sponsorship. You can apply for a post-study visa if you get a job. Even before you get a job, you can apply for a post-study visa and work with them on your post-study visa, but they can choose to sponsor you so that you don't have to apply for a post-study visa and you just go straight on a work visa, right? So you do not actually need sponsorship. So you check the box. Do you have a right to work? Yes, you do. In the UK, yes, you do. You check the yes box. Do you need sponsorship? No, you don't. If you get into the interview, after the interview, go through the interviews, get the role. When you get the job, then you send an email to say, this is my situation. I can apply for a post-study visa, but I would rather I get a sponsored visa. If you guys are willing to give me consider a sponsored visa, that would be my preferred option. But if not, you do let me know and I can go ahead and apply, get my post-study visa and still be able to resume with you guys. That's one of the things I wanted to add to that. And then when you were talking about either audit or what's it called,
Advisory.
accounting advisory, you also need to be very, very, very specific about the kind of advisory, because advisory is very, very broad. It's about the broadest offering that many of these firms have. So you want to be very specific about the kind of advisory. Don't pick an advisory arm simply because it sounds or looks good to you. Like you take a role because you look at it and it's like maybe some sort of advisory. What kind of advisory can we? Let's say corporate finance advisory. You're like, yeah, that sounds like something that's interesting and I want to do. You want to be able to match your skill. You want to be able to take up initially roles that are most closely matched to the skills and experience that you have. That's your best bet for getting a job first. If you go and you want to take roles that are outside of what your skills and experience, previous skill and experiences, your chances are higher that you won't get a role. It's not impossible, but your chances, the chance is much higher that you won't get that role. So you want to be able to say, look, this is the area. So I'm sure if you've been doing accounting transactions and all of that, I know a number of firms that actually do have accounting advisory, because accounting advisory is not that have financial reporting advisory. Financial reporting advisory is quite different from accounting advisory, because financial reporting advisory for some of the firms, particularly firms like I think Grant Thornton and BDO, is actual financial reporting, so where you help clients with preparing financial statements and stuff like that. But when you talk about accounting advisory in many firms, it's actually more of high level IFRS advisory. And they are very, very different. They are very, very different. So you want to be able to match you. And I feel like, given you said you've been in accounting and all of that, you probably would more easily be able to get a role in financial reporting advisory than IFRS or high level IFRS advisory. So you want to be able to come in first in an area where you know that my chances are higher to get this job, and then you can work your way up. Your career is a long game. Where your career is going to end up, you should be looking at your career. Where your career is going to end up in 20 years, 15 years. It's not because of 1 or 2 or 3 years that you wanted to be in corporate finance that you were in audit. That's not the reason that you wouldn't get to where you wanted to get to in 20, where you think you want to get to in 20 years and all that. Sometimes you need to be able to take a step back and use that as a springboard to jump into something else that you want to do. So yeah, I think those are the things I would advise you, most especially the fact that when you apply to these roles, do not check that you need sponsorship. Don't do that.
That's really interesting. And I agree, it makes perfect sense. Let's quickly answer someone's question. He's in tax. However, he wants to do something still tax, but in another aspect of tax, which he believes will fit into probably his goals and what he wants. But the issue is he's not sure that he will be released to go to that unit. So he's looking at, is there maybe leave the firm, obviously, or leave whatever, look for other opportunities outside. once it clocks a year. So he's asking, what do you guys think about this plan that he has? Any takers?
My answer is very short. If it's what you want to do, you're not getting it. Yes, leave. Yes, because at the end of the day, it's your career.
Yeah.
The firm would always be there. So the firm is not loyal to you. I'm not saying you shouldn't be loyal to the firm in certain regards, but you first before the firm. So if you're getting an opportunity outside that is exactly what you want, take it. It's only if you don't get the opportunity outside, then you begin to say, look, how do I walk around where I am to be able to get what I want? Now, don't neglect walking around. Obviously, you can do two things. You can do two things at the same time. You can start building the connection in-house that would help you get to where you want to go within the firm. But if before that happens, you get exactly the opportunity that you have always wanted, but it's from a firm outside, take it. That's my advice to you.
Yeah. Moses, you're mute.
Perfect answer. I just wanted to add the other points you touched on last. So you need to ask, right? And this is also to touch on Bayomi's question. So a lot of people do not ask, and you should. So I did like a CFO advisory stuff and all that. I won the firm, and I remember the night the CFO we were going to replace was talking about. She was actually talking about a lady who was she was like the star girl there because she was doing almost everything. And she was a jail accountant. She was like, okay. So he was now telling the story of how she was initially the tax accountant. So he was now telling us about how she approached him privately, said, I don't really want to do tax. I want to do this jail accounting stuff. And meanwhile, she doesn't even have the required experience. So when the jail accountant wanted to leave, her name was like the first consideration. They had to give a chance, and you do. So the thing is, you need to ask, right? The person currently, the people doing those roles, like Tolulope has said, you need to just connect with them. And there's one thing with passion I know, like when you approach people with this passion and zeal, they always put you in mind. And so alternatives to leaving, you can just be around. I know there's always going to be an opportunity for somebody to replace somebody and all that. So just speak to the people. If you can speak to the head of the department, there's always going to be the opportunity for you to, in-house or get that role. So pending where you are going to live, just ask people around. Very simple but powerful. Yeah.
Sorry, just one thing occurred to me while Moses was speaking, and just makes perfect sense that while you are in there, if you're not able to, the one thing that you probably want to do as well is if you're saying that the issue, because I think you say the issue is that your unit is unlikely to let you go. The one thing you probably want to do is you want to the unit that you want to go to, you probably want to speak to someone who actually does hold a bit of sway in that unit, maybe a partner or something. If you can build a good relationship with a partner there, someone who you can talk to and say, look, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, show passion, like Moses said, and they take a liking in you, that partner could be the one to speak to whoever is the partner in your unit and say, look, potentially, so you can then go to the partner and say, look, this, I've spoken to my partner, but obviously you don't want to do it in a way that's going to make it look like you're pitching one person over, you're trying to create some sort of confusion or friction between units and stuff. But I have seen where partners have been the ones who have gone to speak to partners within the unit where someone wanted to leave and say, is it possible for you to, this guy wants to do this, I think I like this guy, if I'm able to replace. There was a particular situation where there was like an exchange. If I'm able to give you somebody that's good enough and interesting enough that would join your unit, would you be willing to let this person go? And coincidentally, it was actually between audit and tax that happened. That was back when I was at Deloitte. So yeah, it's perfect that you might want to build a relationship with somebody within the other unit that might just happen to be someone that would advocate for you when the opportunity comes. But again, if that doesn't work, you should leave. It's always about you.
That's really interesting and direct, you see, very direct. You first, obviously. Very, very impactful session. I feel like a lot of people think I'm playing when I attend these sessions. I am learning the kind of things I've learned today. Like, I've written some things down. The kind of things I've learned today, like some keys. Something someone would say, I'll be like, oh, that's true. Like, for instance, let me give you 2 out of like the 5. There is the first one around, if you are trying to apply for a job, rather than connecting with someone directly, look for someone in your own network that may know that person, and then get that person to talk to them about you. I mean, that is brilliant. I just know about networking, trying to, introduce yourself to people and to strangers, obviously. But if there is someone in between that knows them even better, that is absolutely amazing. So that makes a lot of sense. And then the talk around, if you've got post-study work visa, obviously with a post-study visa, you can work, right? So a lot of people just say, no, you have to be sponsored. Everybody's going to have to be sponsored. And the opportunities are just going past, and everybody say there are no jobs. I mean, that makes absolute sense. So those are 2 out of like the 5 things that I have not really thought about, that I've learned. And same for all the sessions we've had. So this is not just sessions for mentees, like, oh, we're trying to help mentees. No, we're trying to help ourselves, because we're learning new things every day. So it's really important that all of these sessions, we attend them. This is the last one for this weekend. The weekend is over anyway. So next weekend, we've got other sessions. Mentors are really spending their time. Imagine this almost 2 hours of these fantastic guys. These are our people, their time that they are spending to invest in us. So thank you. Okay, Moses is saying something. He says, like, speaking and getting visible to key players in your units. That was very useful, implementing it. Exactly. So, I mean, that was one of it. Like, when you get to a place, you feel like maybe the boss is the decision maker. Sometimes the boss, the biggest boss, is not even the decision maker, because even in my experience, I've noticed that the Oga Patapata is trying to check before they can make a decision about you. They will be like, they'll go and talk to someone in between who they trust to say, what do you think? That person is the decision maker. That person is the technical decision maker. I've been in a feedback session where I went to meet, I've said it before in one of the mentoring sessions, where I went to meet like a partner for my own feedback. And my partner was like, I don't think we'll be able to really have this feedback until I talk to your managers. Because we don't FaceTime every time. So for them to get like a full picture of me, they need to be talking to the person I'm reporting to. And I learned something really important from that. It means that if my line manager or my line senior manager thinks like I'm rubbish, that's what they're going to feedback to that person. They are the decision maker in that. So thank you so much. And I have learned a lot from these sessions, and I hope you guys will continue to attend these mentoring sessions and make it worth our time and take all this. And I'm not just learning all these things, please, putting it into action, because that is what brings about the testimonies and the change that we are all looking to see. So thank you so much, John.
Just one thing, that I was just going to add. This is about the same thing. One thing that I want everyone to keep in mind as well in terms of being visible is and this happens because it's a time when a number of organizations are laying off people. When they're choosing people to be laid off, and this is about just being visible. It doesn't even have to do with, I want to learn it. Just let someone know, people who are at the top know who you are. The process is, it's just a list of names. But when the people who are making those decisions see names of people that they personally can put a face to, a good number of times they remove those names and replace it with a name that they cannot put a face to. So that's one of the reasons why it's actually quite important as well, just to allow people who are at the top just to know who you are. Catch up with them once in 2 months, once in 3 months. doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be anything technical that you're speaking to. It doesn't. You don't even need to speak to them about anything that you want to gain from them. Just say, look, just wanted to catch up with you. I've been here 1-2 months. I heard that you are the head of this or you are the head of that. I just wanted to introduce myself to you. Blah blah blah. If there's anything that you have on your plate that you think that because I'm open to learning and blah blah, you can send something my way, and I'm 100% willing to. And that's all. You don't really mean that you want to take their job, but hey, they might send something your way, and you just say, "Oh yeah, I'm busy with something at the moment," but they know who you are. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then just
absolutely.
one thing, Moses, I'm actually very, very surprised that somebody was trying to leave strategy consulting to audit. It's the very first time I've heard that
Are you sure?
in my
So
life.
are you sure? Adeyemi, Moses is not trying to jump back. I
The-
don't trust Moses.
It was the very
Moses
first
will do
time.
anything to move.
Yeah.
I don't
I
trust
would
Moses.
expect it's actually the other way around.
The other
People
way
who are
around,
in
yeah.
audit are looking to
Yeah,
move to consulting.
exactly.
I'm
Well,
blown away that somebody in consulting actually
yeah,
wanted to.
It,
Yeah.
it, it,
for
it
for me,
depends. It depends.
I
It
just
depends.
so the markets in Nigeria is we are more compliant than
Mm,
we do not value so when we do group meetings and all that, they're always clients are always owing us money, they don't want to pay and all that. But audit is raking in billions easily. Like
mm,
there was a time I did like a consulting and the way some of I'm keenly interested in some of these businesses, and from there I got like 2-3 clients for audits. So I went to meet one of the guys and I was like, okay, we have this client, they were impressed with what we did. The guy was like, they have made their budget for the year. They don't want small clients. I was like, what? And his strategy, we are literally chasing out that client. So for me, I'll possibly go back to advisory, but I just want to get that because I see that people can easily move from assurance to advisory, and not the other
yeah.
way, or not the other way around. And then
No. People can easily move from assurance
No.
to advisory.
From assurance to
Yeah.
advisory. But to move from advisory
Most of the
to
moves
advisory,
have actually
Oh
been
yeah,
that way.
that's true. Because
People
the
in
higher
audit.
you go,
Yeah.
to go to
Yeah.
audit to be difficult just
exactly,
because of the
become
yeah,
a
I get what
specialist.
you're saying. Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I just saw that there were vast opportunities for me. So maybe when I get like senior one, I could possibly go back to because I'm more passionate about say deals. I see myself doing deals on public finance and all of those things. So
Yeah,
possible,
and
but
you
for
already have
now,
all the
Maybe you should go
transferable
to
skills.
AFC. Well, I don't know. All
Yeah.
of this move that you are moving, you are
But the thing is, it's actually Ricky. You already have all the transferable skills. You have
yeah.
strategy. You have presentation skills from your from being in consulting. You have experience in strategy. You have experience in logical, and then now you're in audit. You now have experience with numbers, financial statements, and all. What else do you need to actually do deals? That's all you need.
That's
So
all you need. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Fantastic. For those that don't know, Adeyemi Moses is one of our mentors. The guy is just doing. Anyways, I'm really very grateful, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone who has joined this call. I'll see you all. So, if someone is saying we should create a WhatsApp or Telegram, we will think about it and see what we can do. Obviously, people are not getting not everyone is on LinkedIn over the weekend. Once they close work on Friday, LinkedIn is synonymous to work. So we'll think about it just to make sure that people get the needed reminder. So thank you, everyone. Take care. I'm going to stop recording. See you all around. Bye.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much, Ma, for this meeting.